to the Scrutiny Programme Committee for the 9th of December. I'm going to start by asking people in the room to introduce themselves so that those online know who is here. So I'm Councillor Peter Black, I'm the Chair, and I'm going to my left.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bridge Madhar from the Council's Scrutiny team.
Lyndon Jones, Councillor in Bishopston.
Robert Smith, Cabinet Member for Education and Learning.
Sarah Lackenby, I'm Head of Digital and Customer Services.
Andrew Williams, Corporate Services, Cabinet Member.
Sam Pritchard, Councillor in Mynyddoch.
Jess Pritchard, Councillor in Mynyddoch.
Hayley Gwilym, Councillor for St Thomas Ward and Cabinet Member for Community Support.
Julie Gosney, Partnership and Involvement Team Manager under Jane Whitmore.
Louise Beckett, Manager of the Learning and Innovation Team in Child and Family Services.
Julie Davies, Head of Child and Family Services.
Ryan Howells, Policy and Strategy Officer, Child and Family Services.
Alison Lowe, Democratic Services Officer.
Hello, I'm Jeremiah from Legal Services.
Thank you very much. We have a cast of thousands in the room, so we should move on. Right, apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Councillors Victoria Holland, Wendy Lewis, and also the cooperative member Beth Allenda. Do we have any other apologies for absence at all? No? Okay, thank you very much. So we've gone to disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. Does any councillor or officer wish to declare an interest at all? Few seconds. No? Okay, thank you. Prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips, which is the standard item. So we've gone to the minutes of the last meeting, which have been circulated. So just to accuracy, on page 1, on page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. Are we happy that those are accurate? Okay, that's good. Thank you. I shall take that as assent. So item 5 then is public question time. We haven't had any public questions. So we're going to move straight on to item 6, which is the Children and Young People's Rights Scheme Progress Report. Can I welcome Councillor Hayley Gwilym, the Cabinet Member for Community Support, and Councillor Robert Smith, the Cabinet Member for Education and Learning. And they are supported by Julie Davies, Head of Child and Family Services, Julie Gosney, Partnership and Involvement Team Manager and Commissioning Hub, Louise Beckett, Learning and Innovation Manager for Children and Family, and Ryan Howes, who's Policy and Strategy Officer. Okay, that's a loss, isn't it? Does Hayley or Rob want to do some few words of introduction? We have read your report, so please don't read the report out.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be welcomed back on an annual basis to talk about children's rights and how we're embedding that right across the council in the work that the teams do. I think, as you mentioned, it's a very comprehensive report. There's lots of information and detail in there about lots of wonderful things that are going on within the teams. And yeah, I'd just like to thank the officers and everybody involved during the course of the year in putting these together and working with our young people who are obviously our future. So yeah, I'll hand over to Ryan then to take you through the report that he's written.
Okay,
Thank
Ryan,
you.
headlines only, please.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to go through the progress update. Allow me to give a brief synopsis. The report highlights our ongoing commitment to embedding the principles of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child across all council services. The purpose of the report is to update Swansea Council's progress in embedding the children's rights using the right way approach across social services, place and education. The goal is to ensure children's rights are central to all decision making and service delivery. So within the report, you will see as a brief history, the scheme launched in 2014 and it was updated after public consultation in 2021. This was aligned with the Children's Commissioner for Wales' Rights Way approach based on the 5 principles of participation, empowerment, embedding, accountability and non-discrimination. And obviously since 2013, the Council's Cabinet has been required to consider the UNCRC in all of its decisions. Just to give you a quick update on how information has been gathered. So we've used consultations, advisory boards, youth committees, and creative activities throughout the different directorates. Surveys, public meetings, workshops, and direct involvement with children and young people in the planning and decision making of these. regular feedback loops, including the sort of you said, we did summaries, and the use of our digital use of Office 365 and Microsoft Forms to collect and collate information. So gathering this vast amount of information from across all the directorates, we utilised managers and practice individuals from the services. They presented their information via Microsoft Forms, and I'll give you a quick key themes of what all of that information brought about. So, considering participation, children and young people actively shape services and policy through advisory boards, panels, and direct involvement. When it comes to empowerment, we've got focus on advocacy, well-being, skill building, and leadership. Young people co-produce services and lead initiatives within Swansea. Embedding. Children's rights are integrated into daily practices via staff training, inclusive project design, and reflective supervision. Accountability. Robust feedback and reporting systems ensure children and family can influence and scrutinise services. And then the non-discrimination, proactive support for inclusion and equality with targeted interventions for underrepresented groups and accessible communication. We have, so they're the key themes, and obviously within the report you can read a lot more detail on those. The actions going forward are also mentioned in the report, but I'll give a quick overview of them. So we're looking to develop more robust methods for measuring the impact of the children's rights initiatives. So that's planning how it looks going forward and then having outcomes based against it. Strengthen strategies to ensure participations for marginalised and hard to reach groups. Enhance and publicise feedback mechanisms to show how children's input leads to change. And then expand and monitor children's rights training for all staff to further embed a rights-based culture. In conclusion, Swansea Council has shown it demonstrates a strong ongoing commitment to children's rights through participation, empowerment and inclusion. The Council's collaborative and innovative approach sets a benchmark for leadership in this area with a focus on continuous improvement and ensuring every child's voice is actively heard. So, any questions?
Don't worry, we have plenty of questions. So. Thank you very much. Okay, so Lyndon, you're going to got the first question.
Great, fine, thank you. How does the council ensure that all children and young people, including those from underrepresented, marginalised or disadvantaged groups, are actively engaged and are able to participate in decision making across the council's service?
So I'll give an answer to this. So the council employs a participation and children's rights officer to help care experienced children and young people share their views. Youth forums and clubs enable collaboration with professionals to promote inclusion and equality. Swansea partners with the Welsh Youth Parliament. NIAS advocacy service is actively offered. The YMCA provides LGBTQ plus support through the Good Vibes Youth Club. The council works with our East Service to represent ethnic minority youth voices. A young carers service is commissioned, and Foster Swansea operates a youth panel to uplift the voices of those in care. So there's some of the ongoing work that's happening.
Yeah, great. How does it actually happen though? Because you say we employ somebody dealing with that and so on, but how does the child actually get involved? What do you do to make that child involved?
I'll come in then, perhaps Julie can come in. But I mean, in terms of, if you take, for example, the YMCA, so they've got identified workers that we commission and we fund. They will have their own communication via social media. We'll promote that through our youth clubs, through our own staff and through Julie's team. So young people are aware. It's also promoted through schools, so schools are aware, and we promote and make that information available through places like libraries and places that parents frequent as well as young people frequent. So we raise awareness through lots of means. We use a lot of social media. We use things like QR codes, so young people are aware. And then where to go, people go based on their interest, I guess, or where it is and where geographically it is. So we try to give them a choice really about what might work for them rather than having very limited options.
Yeah, what I was thinking of, I can see Councillor Sam Pritchard here, and a number of years ago we were involved with an equalities inquiry, and we were in a subgroup with a big gang of children, and they were all looking at them, and nobody wanted to say anything. And Sam likes dogs, I like cats, and we got them talking about that. The next thing, we were the one group that actually went on, it overran because they were all, we got them talking, and it really,
Yes, so we
I want to
engage
see
with-
evidence of how
yeah,
that's
so
actually
we engage
happening.
with young people on their terms. So we'll go to them, not that ask them to come to us. And then in terms of the way things are run, they take control. So a really good example that I use quite a lot is young carers. So that although the YMCA are commissioned to support young carers, we ask them, well, what matters to you, and how do you want to present that to the people that matter, that can influence decisions? So it's mainly education and social services that they're most interested in. So they put together their thoughts about what matters to them, and they actually put challenges to us about, well, this is what we need you to do. And it ranged from things to share with teachers in schools and what they could do to support, and things that people like myself and Kate Phillips, my equivalent of head of vulnerable learners, that we could do to support our staff to engage. And then we go back and so we said, well, how do you want to know how that's going? Well, why don't you just come back and tell us? So they challenge us on their terms in the place that they want us. So that's the approach that we take in everything that we do across our sort of directorates, educations and social services in particular. That makes sense.
I can give a bit of more context, I suppose, to some of the schemes that we do run. So obviously, with it throughout the whole all of the directorates, there's lots of things going on all the time, and various ways to engage young people in different things we do. But if you think of our care experience population, we have our corporate parenting challenges. So it's taking counsellors like yourselves out into our wider community to meet with young people and complete challenges with them. To make sure their voice is then heard when it comes back to things like corporate parenting board. There are things like within our youth justice service, we'll use music and engagement activities so they can go into sound boxes and do some music therapy or rap discussion, for example, to include their voices into something. We've had recent success using getting young people from minority backgrounds to come in to do podcasting, where they're able to use our digital sort of offer to be able to say this is how we do it. So it's a wide range of skills within the council, as you can imagine. It's such a diverse sort of council within, but there's just a flavour, and I'd welcome, obviously, if anyone wants to ever come out with our you mentioned the participation children's rights officer. He's constantly doing different things to engage our board members within children's rights activities. So if you do feel like coming out into the environment with us, that would be amazing.
And I suppose, sorry, just to add to that, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of talking about cats and dogs, finding people's interests. Getting young people and children and young people involved is all about interests, isn't it? No two children and young people are the same, much as we are not. You know, if we were going to strike up conversation in this room, we might need to get to know a little bit about each other. And I think that's the foundation of what we do across the authority. And that's what we're seeing as we try to, you know, offer opportunities to build relationships, but also to get to know how each individual wants to be worked with, and recognise that everyone will have different needs, and that might be learning needs. And if one group can't meet it, we'll look to commissioning services to help us to find ways to do that. It is about meeting individual children and young people. There'll always be group work, and that, you know, if we can bring groups together with similar ideas, that's brilliant. But it's coming back to the person, you know, and finding out how we can connect and do that well.
Just in terms of, sorry,
I was just going to say, some of you might remember, and I definitely remember the scrutiny inquiry that you were talking about was part of the big conversation mechanism that we had with primary and secondary schools. But one of the priorities set by young people in the last sort of school term was all about listening to the quiet voices, so those that maybe don't elect themselves onto a school council and so on. And you're right, it is about finding creative ways, maybe crafting activities. We've recently done some stuff on the behaviour strategy with education, and it was very much done through role plays, games, all that kind of stuff. And it is then through the skill of the team, how they pull all that together and report back in a formal way. So exactly what the team have just explained, multiple mechanisms, because as we know, not one shoe fits all.
just looking at sort of more formal engagement. I mean, the Senate obviously likes the idea of having this youth parliament, schools have their own parliaments or school councils as well. And I know, for example, Bridgend at one stage, I don't know if it still used to have a youth council with a youth mayor or something. Have we looked at doing that sort of thing, or do you think that's not as valuable as what you're doing here at the moment?
So yeah, so we do that across, and obviously the guys can answer from their point of view as well. But we've Swansea have 4 young people sitting on the Welsh Youth Parliament currently, and bringing that level of influence from their area and bringing it back into the Swansea arena is something that they work well and do well. They focus on all aspects of Welsh life, I suppose, and they're helping take Swansea's voice to the Welsh Youth Parliament. Again, there will be further. You can have further information from that. Is when we work with our young people to give us that. But yeah, we're representing at a youth parliament level, and then replicating that sort of youth forum style further down, so school specific, social services specific, etc.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of shadowing the council. You know, where we have youth parliament members and they do a really good job in sort of representing Swansea to the Senate and vice versa. Julie, do you want to come in on this one? Yeah.
Sorry, yes, I was just going to add, you may remember we've reported back here, I guess, many years ago now, that Swansea was one of the first local authorities to move away from that formal mechanism, you know, and elected members and so on. And that was very much steered by young people saying, going back to your previous conversation around quiet voices, those formal mechanisms sometimes don't suit all young people. So we probably made it harder for ourselves by having these multiple really broad mechanisms, but actually using creative ways then to make sure we're feeding all those voices into an arena, which is harder work, takes lots of staff and commitment across a whole local authority, but actually young people felt was more meaningful.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so Peter, do you want to come on this?
So thank you. It really strikes a chord on the engagement. I mean, if you were to consider it an educational setting, say you've got 10 streams or something like that, you'd have the less able academically. You'd have those on possibly free school meals, or you know, they are disadvantaged before they come into the educational setting. And then you've got what you call the top set, yeah, or something like that. So all of those, and rightly so, are given possibly a disproportionate amount of resource. But whether not rightly so comes in is what you're dealing with is, say, sets 3 down to 6, yeah, which we call the critical middle. Now, I've often found that whatever a child's starting point, it is irrelevant. What you're trying to do is to improve from where they started. You know, I speak about sort of GCSEs. It doesn't matter where they're starting on, where they're not getting that piece of paper. To get them up to a G or an F is your goal. And so you know, I've obviously devoted a lot of time to the critical middle. In fact, I took on a group, and just by engaging, asking what their aspirations are, and getting that conversation going really pays dividends. And the specific groups I've worked with, I've really been proud and and honoured of the outcomes they've achieved. So it's all about starting point rather than hierarchies.
I think that's what they've been telling us. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks, Peter. Mary, do you want to come on to your question?
Thank you. Before I ask my question, can I just ask for clarification? Who or what? And I think he said NIAS. So could I have the answer for the acronym, please?
Sorry. So,
Ryan, I think.
Yeah, it's a National Youth Advocacy Service.
Thank you.
Well, ask your question then.
Right, I'll ask my question now. Can you give examples of how feedback from children and young people has directly led to changes in council policy or services in the last 2 years? And what opportunities are there for children and young people to help lead or make decisions in council activities? I think you've answered part of that, but maybe you can still give us a bit more information. Thank you.
So an example that I can give you in Child and Family, and I'm sure we can get them from other parts of the council, is the supported accommodation and youth homelessness provision. So we asked young people their views on that service and what they thought we could do better and differently. They're two separate services. And overwhelmingly, one of the key things that they said about youth homelessness was how it wasn't well enough connected to our base, our adolescent team that's based in Information. They also talked about what they needed from the people that were providing the services that were there, giving them the support, the qualities that they were looking for. So we used their feedback to shape the specification for that service, but also they contributed questions that we then could ask as part of the selection process when we were looking at supported accommodation, but also they sit on interviews across Child and Family for every post that we advertise. They're part of the selection process, so they can also influence in that way. And actually, I've been interviewed by a young person. It's the best part of my interview process because they ask the most amazing questions and they give the most awesome feedback that we as adults or professionals don't give. But it is the best part of the feedback. It's very, very insightful and makes you think. So that's one example. Anybody else got any others?
Yeah, so we've got the youth voice in action. I mentioned the podcasts that we've used before. One of them was for youth voice in action, where care experienced young people would host a podcast to talk about not in education, employment or training sort of things. We talked about entering care and what that's like for them, and then knife crime sharing feedback with the Western Bay Safeguarding Board, and then Western Bay, who are obviously we are part of our regional partners with, then act upon that to come up with their proposals. One of the other, and Julie just mentioned now about our interviews, so we've embedded within Child and Family, and I know education use this a lot as well, is when we invite young people onto our interview panels and create sort of a way in when, so it's not just a person having a board in front of them, the usual interview process. There would be young people doing different designated activities with the possible applicants, and they don't just turn up and we offer them, here you go, you need to do this activity, you ask these set of questions. They're in the whole process of, this is what we want to ask the people who are going to be working with us, this is how we want to do it, this is the style we want to approach them. So there's another, one of my more favourite examples of how they directly involved in every decision, every employment decision we make in Child and Family.
Thank you. And I was just going to critically mention the corporate parenting pledges. I'm hoping everyone in this room is aware of them, but this is where we have signed up to pledges, 7 key areas for our looked after children, our care experienced children and young people. And that was something that went to full council and that we have signed up to as an authority, because corporate parenting isn't just a social services or child and family responsibility, it is cross council. And that was a key piece of development work that we did with young people who led those priorities and are telling us as a council at every level, from our leader and chief exec through to the backroom staff that may never see them, we need to understand we have those responsibilities in every area of the council, whether that be in place, in social services, education, finance even, needs to recognise that responsibility. And I think that was the fact that we let children and young people work with our corporate parenting board to develop that, allowed us to get that right. And hopefully we'll continue to develop that and help our young people be the best that they can be.
Yeah, I know much of this is sort of covered in the report, but I think there's several levels to this also. So as a council, I think some of the sort of really big strategies and plans that have been reviewed currently, like the poverty strategy, like the EOTIS review in education, like the behaviour strategy, school dinners, for example, if Rodri was here from education, these are some of the things he'd mention. These are all being informed by children and young people. And then I guess more operationally, I just use cultural services as an example. Within our museums, libraries, you know, these are all regular engagement sessions that they're either doing sort of in holiday time or within schools, reviewing what our services are like, what would make it more accessible, what they like, what they don't like, what could be better. So this is truly embedded, and I think there's many, many examples within the report really to show how across the whole council we're doing this.
I just want to emphasize and echo what's been said, really, because yes, it's important that these things are embedded within the way the Education Directorate works, and they are. and the way the schools work. But it's equally important that they're not confined to one directorate. This is a whole council approach, and I think that's what we're getting, clearly in this report. It's being emphasised that this is being done across the whole council. It's not limited in one or two areas that specifically work with children and young people, and I think that's one of the strengths.
Okay, thank you. And Hayley.
Yeah, sorry. I think in Councillor Robert Francis Davis's absence, I think it would be remiss of me not to talk about the play equipment investment, which is, mega millions of pounds that's been invested in play areas right across the city, and the work that's gone on with the play sufficiency team as well. And I know that Jackie Rees-Thomas is retired, but she was heavily involved in engaging with lots of children and young people, and our disabled children as well, and making play areas, accessible and inclusive to all, whether that's via communication methods, or whether it's being able to get into a park and to actually use apparatus. So I think that it is happening right across the council. It's just sometimes we just don't think about it as being a children's right.
Yeah, and of course we're now installing youth shelters in at least 3 parks in the city, mine, yours, and Dunvan's as well. Exactly. So to engaging with the older kids as well, and as part of that, and giving them somewhere to go if they don't want it in a less formal setting. Right, very quickly.
I was just going to say exactly what you said there. There's a massive consultation going on at the moment into park strategy.
Yeah.
And there's been lots and lots of activity on weekends in schools, multiple ways to engage, really. So it's really exciting, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And move on now to Mike White. Got a question on the youth service. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we obviously this is leading very into the question I really want to ask for older children. You service the difficulties in recruiting qualified youth workers affected the council's ability to support participation and embed children's rights.
Who wants to take this? Let's have 1 or 2 rather than everybody.
I'll take this.
Julie, yeah.
That's okay, thank you. It's fair to say that recruiting qualified youth workers is a national problem across Wales. It's a challenge that we always face. So in terms, just as a reassuring you, we're looking at ways that we can make our offer to work for us as youth worker more attractive by investing more in ensuring that everybody's qualified to a level and can progress. I think because the youth workers are part of our early help hub model, I don't think it does affect the way that we have fully embedded children's rights and participation across the whole service. And the teams work well together to ensure that that continues no matter what, even when they may have. Although we do have churn, we do have high numbers of applicants, so we do recruit quite readily to those posts. So I think, no, in short, no, it's not an issue. I think it's very well covered, very well embedded, and we're proud of our youth service and the way it's evolved since COVID in particular.
Okay, Mike.
Can I just say, obviously, is then the people that you train in is good practice used? If there's good practice between different people that you interview.
Absolutely. Again, these are interviewed by young people, so that's good practice. We share good practice across the council. The operational teams come together to talk about what they're doing, how that works. We also participate in national forums to do specifically with youth service, so we share good practice there, and also we're participating in peer inspection. So again, we've got opportunity there to hear and learn about good practice from other parts of Wales.
I think I'm just grateful we do have youth workers now, because I know we went through a stage where we had virtually no service at all. And in fact, if I'm correct, youth service is not a statutory service. And is that correct? I think that's right, is it?
Well, I think that we do have funding that we have to spend on delivering a youth service.
But in terms of a duty to deliver.
Right, yeah. No.
I know I tried to put a private member's bill through the Senate to make it a statutory service at one stage, but I think the fact it's not a statutory service means that the delivery in all 22 councils is variable. Yes. And maybe that also means that the youth workers don't feel there's actually a market for the services, so people go elsewhere. And hopefully that's changing now. That's coming through, and we very much welcome that as well to underpin our work and our model going forward. Okay, Lyndon.
Great, thank you. What benchmarks or indicators are now in place to show how well children's rights are being embedded across all council departments?
Sorry, yeah, I think I'm going to answer this one. So for a long time, I think Swansea led the way on the children's rights scheme, realising that the Children's Commissioner had put a framework in place really called the Right Way approach. Swansea adopted it when they looked at a children's rights scheme. Welsh Government then came behind looking at what we were doing as a good model for working going forward. What it also allows us to do now as a local authority, because we now have declared ourselves a human rights city, that same framework of those 5 rights principles have been adopted for human rights city work also. So there's a really robust framework and transition between children's rights and broader human rights that we've put in place in Swansea. So Ryan mentioned that one of the things that's really difficult to do is to benchmark and assess impact and, you know, how well are we doing on this. But I think having this framework that is used at Welsh Government level, at local authority level, that is consistent across any department, looking at how we embed children's rights is super helpful. And I don't know if I've answered your question, Councillor. Some of the reporting mechanisms we do then is obviously we come here, we report to Welsh Government, we report to the Children's Commissioner. There's many, many mechanisms and ways in which we're required to report on our progress, really. Thank you.
Mike, you've got a follow-up question on this, haven't you?
Please, Chair. I want to know if you can confirm whether all schools in Swansea have formally adopted the UNCRC, and if not, what steps have been taken to achieve full coverage?
Julie? Oh, Ryan, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
so thank you for the question. Yeah, so by 2018, all schools in Swansea had formally adopted the UNCRC. Schools were provided with funding at the time to achieve the UNICEF's Rights Respecting Schools Award. Decisions regarding maintaining that award are now made with the individual schools. That is because the UNCRC is embedded within Welsh law, policy and the curriculum for Wales. So every school within Wales will be has that embedded in their curriculum and must act upon it. Statutory guidance and teaching on subjects such as humanities, health and well-being are informed by the UNCRC. So where previously it was we supported the schools to achieve the UNICEF's Rights Respecting Schools Award. That is down to each individual school if they want to continue that. However, within the curriculum, there's been a change where the UNCRC is now embedded in the curriculum, and all schools must include that.
Okay, Mike. So just leading on from that, obviously, making sure that all relevant staff, particularly in schools, have the training, the up-to-date training on children's rights, and that what progress is being made, and how do we monitor that training? Yeah.
Historically, governors received training linked to the Rights Respecting Schools Award. Julie's team worked very hard alongside the schools to ensure that. Schools are encouraged to use the Welsh Government website for comprehensive online training and access to the toolkits that come directly from the Children's Commissioner. Swansea Social Services deliver children's rights and advocacy training to staff, carers, adopters, social workers and partner agencies on selected dates throughout the year. And all Swansea staff are required to complete mandatory online equality and human rights training through our Oracle, and children's rights is now, as Julie mentioned, part of the human rights city approach.
So that's monitored through Oracle then, is it?
Yes.
And when I say monitored, who checks it and how do you make sure it is being done? Yeah, Julie.
So we have regular, we started to get regular reports from off the system, but what we do as part of our annual performance appraisals is we ask those questions as part of that, and then in team briefings we'll check that out as well, and then in sessions I deliver to whole staff, we check in with staff to make sure that.
And that's cross-departmental, is it?
Yeah, that's an expectation across the whole of the council.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
we've
got enough problems getting safeguarding training across the whole council.
I think because we've introduced all these checks and balances now, and it's something that people can see the value in.
Yeah,
it's not such a difficult question to ask because people want to do it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Right, the other question I've got is what systems in place to regularly? Well, we just talked about the systems, haven't we? So, but in particular, the outcomes of participation you said we did, how is that shared with children, families and the public? How are those outcomes shared with people?
So I'll take this one.
Yeah.
We've got a fair bit of reporting around this. Obviously, we come here and we give you our annual update report. In addition to this, we have to submit a report to Welsh Government in line with their requirements every 5 years. That is a full in-depth report, which will be much longer than you've read today, and that is already quite a hefty document. And in addition, there'll be an interim report produced every 2.5 years. Alongside this comprehensive report, which is that perhaps extended professional level and tone, we do co-produce a young person friendly report with young people so that it is accessible for all young people to feedback on. And then Julie, I don't know if you want to talk about the World Children's Day bit, because this is something your team.
So every November it's World Children's Day. So what we do within that event happens annually. Hayley and other councillors have been many times, is we feedback on the priorities that were set by children and young people at the start of the term. What progress have we made? So very much as Ryan explained, the you said we did. And we report that back to those that attend on that day. But what we then do is create like a video or a presentation package that schools then will take back and kind of run throughout their schools across Swansea as assemblies, maybe sort of peer-led by their school councils or rights respecting schools reps. So it really does vary. So there's an event and then there's the feedback then that we take back into assemblies.
Okay, thank you. Right, Chris Holly. Get this mic on.
I'm sorry, I haven't got the question.
What progress is being made developing robust ways to evaluate the impact of children's rights initiatives beyond anecdotal feedback?
That's the question.
There we are. Who wants to answer that there?
Chris, I really like that question. I'm manager of the performance team in Child and Family Services, and we talk about meaningful measures quite a lot, which is not just the KPIs or numbers that we see and read, but it is actually about understanding from children and young people how their experience with us feels to them and whether we're making a difference and whether they see that in their real lives. So that is something we are really passionate about, and I would say that's something we want to continue to develop. However, our reporting does kind of demonstrate that children and young people are actively contributing and shaping to the services and involving in strategic decisions, and our integrated impact assessment, the IIA, mandates that children's rights are upheld with their voice and adhered through the council. So that has to be completed with every development that we do. Anyone that's been involved with that will know that's quite a lengthy process, or can be, but quite rightly so. Along with the human rights element, we have to take into account and consider how we've consulted with young people and that we've got their voice involved in those things. But what I would say, Chris, is it's a work in progress, and I say we are committed to continuing to put some measures behind this and behind the report that allow us to collate information in a number of ways throughout the years that we report on, and to continue to develop that. But all ideas are welcome. They're never turned down. So if anyone can come up with any creative ideas, but we do have, with the development of dashboards and systems, opportunities to continue to understand how we can involve children and young people in that and develop perhaps better recording across the council as well.
We have obviously going to the performance scrutiny board. We have the KPIs, and we have social services there. Normally, we ask questions to go back to the social services as opposed to the collator of the information on the KPIs. So I think the performance monitoring, it may well be that in future what we'll ask for is a more detailed report from Children and Family Services to get that feedback from the children and from yourselves to what goes to performance monitoring.
Sorry, just to come back on that. Yes, absolutely. We would welcome that. Ryan is managing now our Participation and Children's Rights Officer in Child and Family Services, and working very closely alongside Julie and her team. And our drive is to be led by children and young people. To get it right for them, we have to have those conversations. So yes, we welcome that. And I know Julie's very passionate about making sure that our reports do echo children, young people's and families' voices. So that is something that my team are working on. And as we are now taking the lead on the reports, we will be definitely looking to take up that challenge.
Okay, when the next time they come up in front of scrutiny, then we'll have a look at it and then probably write back to you, asking you within a letter for a more detailed. Ideally, what we'd like is examples, and I think that's what we'll write back and ask for.
I imagine that the anecdotal feedback is far more satisfying than all the KPIs.
It may well be, the Chairman.
Yeah. So, okay. Mike White, got last question.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on areas for development. What are the current priorities for further development in embedding children's rights, and how will success be measured?
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Chair. I think Louise has just touched on that we know there's further work for us to do in terms of measuring impact and outcomes. So that's, I'm working with children and people about how they'd like that to be represented and what actually matters to them that should be measured and tracked. So one thing that we are really good at doing is going back to speak to people to ask, well, how was it for you? And talk to us about your experiences. And something called appreciative inquiry is in our world, and with permission, and I think Chris, you hopefully would like this, is that a video is then created from that, and it's very powerful and very passionate because you then actually know the difference that's made. And we've done something similar with children. And on the away sessions and residentials we have with children, it's all about their rights and what that means to them. So that's an area that we're going to continue to improve on. The other areas that we want to improve on is expanding our reach. We're not complacent. We know that we can always do better. So particularly groups that may not be as well represented as they are at the moment. So reaching out and making sure that we are reaching out through the right means and always asking and being curious and making sure we always tailor our communication and support based on what young people are telling us. If they don't understand it, then as far as I'm concerned, it's not right. So my first question is always, would a young person or a child understand this? And the answer needs to be yes, otherwise you go back and start again. You said we did is a very traditional loop of having feedback, again, based on people's feedback and children's feedback is how would they like that to be represented? What would work for them? What channels, what mechanisms, what methods? So we'll continue to work on that. That's going to be always an area for continuous improvements. We will always look at it consistently. And in terms of our staff, we're very keen that they keep up with the times and they grow and develop with us on that journey. And so we're always looking at ways we can enhance our induction programme, existing training programmes we have across the council, training programmes that may be for elected members. So we continue to promote best practice across the whole of the council and into our schools as well. So that's something that we're continuously improving and always being engaged in national and regional forums to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mike, is that okay?
Yeah. How do you then measure those priorities that are actually on course? How do you measure that as you're going through them?
Ryan?
Hi. Yeah, so Louise mentioned that's one of our areas for development. So ironically, how we then measure is going to be something we work on quite a lot over in the coming months. Obviously, we have some good examples, one of them being the local wellbeing plan and how that looks at the sort of what we're looking to improve, and then look at our primary drivers and our secondary drivers. And once we identify those with young people, we can then measure against our primary and secondary drivers to ensure that we're meeting the outcomes similarly to what the local wellbeing plan does. So that's one of the loops, but we do want to work with young people to come together to make the right choices on how we measure something.
Okay. Chris, you wanted to come in on?
Yeah, it's quite interesting what you just said about the video. I can remember many years ago we done one about the team around the child, and we done that video and combined it with the police as well. Very, very successful video. Went around all the comprehensives, and I was wondering if we could do something like that again, because it did make a big difference. And you talked about knife crime and the general behaviour. I think it would be well worth contacting the police again and see if we can do something of that nature, because it was very powerful and it did work.
I'd imagine you do work quite closely with the police on a lot of this stuff anyway. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else got any questions on this issue? No. Can I thank you very much then for coming along? It's a pleasure to have such committed and passionate staff coming to talk about this issue, and hopefully we'll be moving forward and further developing our youth work and working with young people as part of the work you've got planned ahead. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 7 now, which is the annual complaints and compliments report. But underlined compliments there. And welcome Councillor Andrew Williams, who's the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, brackets performance, and Sarah Lackenby, who's the Head of Digital and Customer Services. Yeah, Andrew, do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the invite to attend today. I'm pleased to introduce this year's annual corporate complaints and compliments report. I'd like to highlight that the Council received over 500 compliments this year, a notable increase helped this year by improved reporting. We also received just over 2,000 corporate complaints. It's important to note that the majority of these relate to some of our largest service areas: waste collection, housing repairs and environmental health. So understandably, these generate more complaints. However, this is small compared to the thousands of service requests that we handle each year. And these complaint patterns are consistent with those seen by the Ombudsman across Wales. Complaints can sometimes arise from unforeseen circumstances, such as vehicle breakdowns, severe weather or restricted access, which can temporarily affect our ability to deliver services. Only around 10% of stage 1 escalated to stage 2, with most issues resolved quickly and effectively. I am also pleased to report that there were no interventions by way of public interest reports or special interest reports for Swansea Council from the Ombudsman this year. I'd like to thank Sarah and her team for this report, and I'm very pleased that she's here today to give you more detail on it. Thanks very much.
I don't think, remember, we have read the report, so.
Thank you. I'll just highlight some key points, if that's okay, Chair. So just in terms of the response time, so just the fact that over 91% of stage 1 complaints were responded to in 10 working days, which is 28% improvement, mostly because of the React system we put in July 23. That's been pivotal in helping with improved performance continually. And in terms of stage 2, over 82% were responded to in 20 working days or within an agreed extension. So that's a 21% improvement. So again, we're seeing performance improving each year, which is good. And only 10% escalated stage 1 complaints to stage 2. So although you'll see in the report, waste and refuse saw a 38% increase in stage 1 complaints, only just under 5% of those escalated to stage 2. So just showing that also waste saw a significant number of compliments. So it's just how the service was managing that. They had a low escalation rate and very proactive management, swift response to the issues they're experiencing. Compliments as well has gone up, as Councillor Williams mentioned, increased by 61%. Again, waste, refuse, roads and transport and housing received the most positive feedback. And again, improved reporting means that we've been able to see more this year. And we've got the new Improving Customer Access Working Group now established. So they're learning from any complaints and compliments, both the 6-month report we do to Governance and Audit Committee and the annual report, obviously, we bring here. So they're looking at that and then looking at how improvements can be made across services. And just mentioned in the report, there's no significant trends for concern when we've analysed the report. No systemic issues that we're seeing, and the financial redress you can see was minimal at £500, just around 1 complaint. Only 1 case was formally upheld from the Ombudsman out of the 113 referred, with an intervention rate of just under 11%. And all the Ombudsman recommendations have been completed, and we've got some measures in place to improve the compliance recommendations. So thank you very much. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Of course, we're all aware of the waste collection issues because we've had them up before us twice on that one anyway. So hopefully that seems to be settling down now. Anyway, so Mary Jones, you want the first question?
Thank you very much, Chair. What factors contributed to the improvement in response times for stage 1 complaints, and how will these improvements be maintained? Thank you.
So yeah, definitely the introduction of the new complaint system React, that's made a huge difference, as I mentioned, from July 23, because it's constantly escalating where complaints aren't being answered within a time. So, and it's counting down the clock as well. So I think busy officers are then getting constantly reminded. We've also seen, there's a lot of increased accessibility for residents. I think you'll see in the report 82% of complaints were received online or via online forms. So I think people are finding it easier to complain. We do make the process as simple as we can, and people can phone as well. So we are seeing that. I think in terms of the follow-up question, how will these improvements be maintained? I think the continued use and development of the React system. So we are looking every year about how we can make improvements to it. We're incorporating any feedback we get from officers about how we can improve any of the processes on it. And you'll see in other parts of the report, now we're looking at corporate complaints today, but you'll see in other parts of the report, lots of sharing of best practice across departments, but particularly in social services as well, and how they're sharing information. So we are looking at how we can sort of incorporate more feedback. And again, the Improving Customer Access Working Group is a key part of that, because we've got representatives from across the council as well. So when we're looking at complaints, any of their feedback can be incorporated.
Mary, okay? Yeah. Okay. So Mike White, you want the next question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you give examples of specific service improvements or change in practice made as a direct result of complaints?
Thank you. Yeah, and obviously I think it would be the waste from which you already know about. Yeah. But I think when they were seeing complaints rising, they did put in a very comprehensive action plan straight away, which has made a huge difference, and it has seen significant improvements. So they'd done a major recruitment campaign. They set up a working group. They're looking at new technology as well, with sort of in-cab technology and what they can do around the vehicles. And they put additional support in, and that made immediately we were seeing an improvement in that. So I think that it just shows how quick management action plans can make a huge difference then.
Are there any other trends in these complaints similar to the waste one where you've identified a particular problem this year?
We haven't, no. I mean, we've been, it's one of the key things that I do look at, and there hasn't been. So although we might have seen some complaints around a certain area, but they've all been slightly different, we haven't seen any trends really on anything. No, not this year.
Yeah. They tend to come to us as well, so we tend to notice them too.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Mike, anything, you okay with that? Yeah. No follow-up question? Okay,
No,
Lyndon.
no, thank you, Chair. No, I'm happy with the response.
Yeah, Lyndon.
Great, thanks. What steps have been taken to promote the annual report and ensure departments are aware of the key findings in that report?
So we've specifically obviously shared the report and had input from the services mentioned in the report. They've had it direct input into it before we've presented it. Following all the meetings that we're having, because we do take this report to several committees, we'll be doing a more broad publicity across the whole council around it. But we do also, we're looking at it, as I say, through the Improving Customer Access Working Group as well, where we've got representatives from across the council. So again, we're going to be, well, we have done and we will be looking at several avenues to try and really promote it. And also, as that grows, we can get more input each year, both at the half-year report and the annual report.
Great, thank you.
I think this goes to the audit committee as well, and also to the social service panels, I think. Yeah.
It does, yes, Chair. And also it goes to the Standards Committee, obviously, because the Ombudsman report includes the Code of Conduct.
Yeah, okay. Peter, you want to follow?
Yeah. First of all, I congratulate you on something your number of complaints made in Welsh has gone up by 40% this year. So that's worth reporting from 5 to 7. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of good things in this report on there. I mean, you've got some clear downward trends going on here in particular departments. Are you feeding back to praise the departments, and that's part of the reporting internally? And also, are you actually sort of reporting to planning and building control, because their stage 1 to stage 2 has gone up by 40%. So reporting's a two-way things. There are a lot of positive things, but you also reporting the critical things too.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I did have a quite lengthy conversation with planning manager about that one. And again, there wasn't any particular trends in that. Sometimes it was to do with delays. Some of the complaints are quite complicated as well.
Yeah.
But we didn't see any trends in there, but I did have some detailed conversations with them about it. And as you say, when we're looking at the trends year on year and the increases and decreases, have those conversations just to see if there's anything systemic going on.
I suppose next year's might reveal whether a blip.
Yeah.
I think in terms of planning, particularly, the issue is going to be resources. I think that's going to be the trend, because we haven't got enough officers to get the planning applications through quicker. Enforcement is taking a long time, and maybe that may be generating complaints because of that, and that's something which maybe they need to be aware of as part of this, from this report, perhaps. Maybe try and feed that back to them. I know I complain to them all the time, so. Andrew, yeah.
Yeah, just an update, Chair. I've just come off a call actually with the planning department, and we are actively recruiting new planning. I think there's one planning officer and one enforcement officer so far, and we're probably looking for more in the new year. So hopefully that will help that situation we're talking about.
Aided by the increase in fees for the first time in like 5 years or so.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms, I've got a question about the Ombudsman. How is the council working to ensure consistency between its own complaints reporting and that of the Ombudsman, particularly in categorising and analysing complaints?
So we have aligned them following your request from last year's report. We have aligned it with the quarterly submissions that we get. So it's fully aligned with those. The final report then does change slightly with the Ombudsman, and you'll see there's certain categories in there around COVID-19 and things like that, which obviously is 0. So we are going to be working with the Ombudsman again this year to see how we can align that further and see if any of those redundant categories are actually needed. Also, there is always a slight disconnect, because we will report in the financial year around complaints, whereas the Ombudsman goes across years, because some of their cases are open for quite a long time because they're quite complicated and they take quite a long time to investigate. And we've had some discussions in past years with the Ombudsman about that, but they've said, unfortunately, that's just the reality of how the two organisations work slightly differently. So although the numbers may slightly differ because of that reason, but we're going to try and look and see if we could align the categories further as you requested last year. But there's definitely more alignment. The only area I would like to highlight is that in bringing some of those categories together, we do lose some of that granularity. So, for example, previously we were providing more information about housing or housing repairs, whereas for the Ombudsman it's all under housing. So in the report I have tried to obviously separate that out so you've got more information within the data. Yeah, that we are desperately trying to make that.
I don't think we want to lose the granularity, because I think it's useful to have that detail, particularly if you're managing the service and you can see that particular complaints are focusing on how you're delivering that service. I think they want to see, in terms of housing management or whatever. Yeah. And the Ombudsman, of course, is a much more broad brush anyway. Yeah. Okay. And then departmental accountability. How are departments held accountable for addressing recurring issues identified through complaint data? And we talked about the waste service, but if you come across a particular issue from this, how would you then get the department, make sure the department addresses it and feed that back in terms of that?
Yeah, complaints officers will escalate complaints to me quite regularly, just to have a conversation or to look at in terms of if there's something coming from the ombudsman or something to look at. We haven't particularly seen any trends, as I say, though, this year, but we would normally, I would then have a conversation with one of the managers or a head of service if we did see any issues, and then we would look at if there's any action plans needed. And where needed, we would escalate it further if it was a wider issue to CMT or cabinet members. But like I say, we haven't seen any trends this year.
In terms of the more individual thing, if someone makes a complaint to you, presumably they get feedback on that complaint when they get. Do you actually do a monitor of how satisfied they are with the responses? Is there any sort of focus on that at all?
Yes, and part of that is how many of the stage ones escalate to stage two, because some of that might be because people are unhappy with a stage one response. And then the stage two is fully investigated by the complaints officer. And if people are unhappy, then they can go to the ombudsman. But yes, we would, if we find that there's a particularly controversial or difficult issue, or a member of the public is particularly unhappy, then obviously we'd look at it, and that'd be something I'd look at as well, along with the complaints.
Because sometimes a member of the public might make a complaint and they get the response, "Oh, I can't be bothered going any further," you know, but they may not be satisfied. I mean, do we ever do a survey of complainants to sort of see how effective we are in terms of responding?
We don't do that. No, we don't.
No.
Actually, no.
It might be worth looking at if that. I mean, obviously, I don't want to create extra work for you, but it might be worth looking at to see that, just so we get an idea then of how well we deal with complaints as part of that.
One of the things we are looking to introduce around our call handling generally across customer services is if we can get sort of feedback as soon as people have had a service. So as you might with other private sector organisations, you might get a text.
Oh yeah.
Say, how have you found the recent service? We're trying to introduce something similar in that. So I think there might be opportunities for us to do that then with complaints.
Yeah, it might be worth looking at that. The worst ones are the ones who send you a text, expecting you to text back and spend money to give them feedback. Don't do that. No. Okay, anybody else got any questions on this report, which is, as usual, a very good report, and we focus on the complaints, but we should make a particular point of saying the compliments are really good as well in terms of the service which has been delivered by all the staff across the council, which I think, you know, is to be commended. So thank you for coming along. Oh, hang on, I got Paxton Hood-Williams wants to ask a question. Paxton.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's fair for me to comment on the sense on child and family services situation, and I'm sure Sue will say much the same thing as I would about adult social services. But essentially, we look at these complaints, as you so rightly said, but it always tends to surprise me where we have these very difficult situations that the complaints are kept as low as they are. And although we can see some big figures there, like a 158.8% increase in the justification of complaints within child and family services last year, that is about, if I can work out the figures right, in terms of about 30 complaints compared with all the work they do. It looks huge, but it's because it's on a small starting base in the first place. So I just want to say, in essence, we look at it very closely. We do ask the questions, and effectively, I think by and large they do a pretty good job to keep the complaints as low as they actually are. Thank you.
I assume you'll be asking this question in your panel as well, Paxton.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, otherwise I would have asked Julie Davis to stay behind.
Well, I'm glad she wasn't there to hear it, because I'm glad she wasn't here to hear it, Chairman, because it might have made her a bit more happy than she needs to be when she comes to us to talk about it. If you see what I mean.
No, that's the attitude of a scrutiny councillor, isn't it? Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Can I thank you for coming along and dealing with this report? Thank you again for the report, and no doubt you'll enjoy yourself in the next 3 committees you take this report to as well. Thank you. Or maybe is it 4? I've lost track. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the item 8, which is the Scrutiny Performance Panel Progress Report. Chris is still with us, I think, Chris Holly. We're looking at service improvement, regeneration of finance. Do you got anything you want to add to this report, Christopher?
No, not really. Just to go through it to say about the number of meetings we've had. I'd like to highlight a few of them if I can. The annual performance report on planning. Interesting, you were saying the complaints on it. That was part of it, and it was quite interesting about the various levels of complaints and what they were. But it was interesting. The other one is, and you were right about the enforcement, takes far too long. The freedom leisure one was again very interesting, but one I think that we will need to expand in future years, because I feel that this is one subject being part and parcel of the fabric of the city, and the fact that we have so many facilities under freedom leisure. I think it's very important that we keep a very close eye on what's happening. The baling plant report, again, one which was, I have to say, not as good as what it's been in the past, and something we need to look at in the future. All the finance reports, which we look at regularly, are all on track. Mr. Smith is incredibly keen to keep us all well informed about how he's saving money or making money, or so it is particularly interesting on that. I think one of the other things that we are very keen on, when in the 4th of November we reviewed the revenue reserves, which for people in finance was very interesting. For everybody else, I think it was quite boring. But I think the one under that was the tourist destination management plan update. Tourism has now become the biggest industry in Swansea, and we need to make sure that what we are actually doing enhances tourism. And I think there is some issues and some very big issues about the tourist destination in Swansea, including the various aspects from the Gower right up to the Highlands in Mour and what have you. So I think there are issues around that, but those are the only ones that I really want to point out in that particular page. The other ones were all about, as I said, about finance, but we also had a very close look at the regeneration in the city centre and the health of the city centre. A lot of that was done in camera because of the financial implications of our contracts. So that one, again, some very interesting comments about it, some very interesting projects. But again, as I say, a lot of it was held in camera, which is very difficult to then in a recorded session like this go too detailed with. And I think overall the performance monitoring, I said earlier on, talking about children's, it generally speaking, when we see the performance and the PTIs, they're all of them, within our expected parameters. There are some that aren't, and one that stands out mostly is sickness. But when you look into that, when you think that the people who are off sick mostly are people that work on the outside and in refuge, or social workers, or care assistants who go in and mix with ill people as well. So it's natural that these figures are going to be higher than anyone who works in an office. So I think when we see that the sickness figures, we got to realize that there is a background to that. Development and regeneration monitoring, we've had a look at every one of these, including the campus, the universities and various other aspects within the regeneration, what have you. the one that we've already just brought to council was the achievement against corporate policies, priorities. We went into that in some depth. Again, I think the council, when it was reported to council, I think some of the members actually spoke in that. And there's a bit about freedom, leisure, and I think that's it, really, Leader, Chairman. I don't think there's anything else, and I'll try and ask some questions if there are any questions.
I think you covered the entire report there, Chris.
Did I?
Anybody
I
got any
did miss
questions?
one page. There's a paragraph I missed. Do you want me to go back on that?
No, it's fine, it's fine. Anybody got any questions for Chris at all on this? No? Okay, thank you very much for that, Chris. That's very helpful and very useful, and shows the breadth of work which is carried out by that particular panel as well, which
Thank you.
keeping people on their toes. Okay, so item 9 is membership of scrutiny panels and working groups. So we need to approve the membership and convener of the cost of living and community resilience scrutiny inquiry, with Lyndon Jones volunteering to act as convener, and also the taxi services scrutiny working group, with 6 members there, with Councillor Michael Locke, who's volunteered to act as convener. Are we happy to approve those? Yeah, okay, thank you. And then item 10, scrutiny work programme. You see the work programme in front of you. The meeting in January now, we're going to have a Q&A with the leader, who's also cabinet member for economy, finance and strategy. And we'll also be following up on the public engagement scrutiny working group. And also, I think, looking at the final report on the grant scrutiny inquiry panel, which is actually signing off tomorrow morning, I think, as part of that as well. And then scrutiny letters for information, and the date and time of up and coming scrutiny panel working group meetings also for information. So can I thank you all very much for coming along. Wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we'll see you next time in January. Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.